I stand in the marble foyer of the Mercer estate, my footsteps echoing through halls that once felt like a prison. Now they're mine. All mine. Flash to 3 years earlier, worthless, ungrateful disappointment. My father's words cut through the night air as my mother laughed, watching him toss my sketchbooks onto the wet pavement. Rain soaked through my only suitcase while neighbours peeked through curtains at the spectacle. Art school, you'll be begging on street corners within a month? My mother's diamond bracelet caught the streetlight as she waved dismissively. When you fail, and you will fail, Olivia, don't come crawling back. My father's final blow. You'll amount to nothing. Nothing. Back to present, I run my fingers along the antique desk where my father once signed the deals that built his empire, the same desk where I now sign the checks that fund my art foundation. The irony isn't lost on me as I gaze at the family portrait still hanging on the wall, the last reminder of the people who threw me away. They said I'd amount to nothing. Now I own everything they worked for. Have you ever fantasized about proving wrong everyone who doubted you? That moment when their smug smiles fade as they realize they've made the biggest mistake of their lives. This isn't just a fantasy. This is my story. And trust me, revenge doesn't just taste sweet. It tastes like justice served cold on a silver platter they can no longer afford. Before I reveal how I went from homeless at 18 to owning this multi-million-dollar estate at 21, take a second to hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you don't want to miss the moment my parents realized they'd created their own downfall. If you've ever been underestimated, belittled, or cast aside, smash that like button right now. Your support helps the Nexus of Revenge channel bring more stories of sweet, satisfying justice to light. And stick around, because the way I discovered their hidden fortune. That's the part that changed everything. Growing up as Olivia Mercer meant living in the shadow of expectations I never asked for. From the moment I could hold a crayon, I was drawn to colours, shapes, and the freedom of expression that came with creating art. My bedroom walls, against my mother's protests, became my first canvas, covered in sketches and paintings that told stories my voice couldn't. Art is how I breathe, I once told my grandfather, the only person who ever truly saw me. He'd nod, his eyes crinkling at the corners, and say, "Then never stop breathing, little one." But to understand my story, you need to understand the Mercer family dynasty. My father, Richard Mercer, wasn't born into wealth. He clawed his way into it, building a real estate empire across New England with ruthless precision. Every handshake was calculated, every smile measured for maximum gain. His philosophy was simple. In this world, you're either the one holding the knife or the one bleeding out. My mother, Victoria, came from old money that had mostly dried up by the time she met my father. What remained was a name that opened doors and a network of connections that my father leveraged mercilessly. Together, they were Boston's power couple, him providing the financial muscle, her delivering the social credibility. Our home wasn't a home, it was a showroom. Pristine white furniture that no one sat on. Crystal vases filled with fresh-cut flowers that no one stopped to smell. Family portraits where we wore colour-coordinated outfits and practiced smiles that never reached our eyes. Stand up straight, Olivia. God gave you height. The least you could do is use it. My mother would hiss before galas and charity events. And for heaven's sake, stop talking about your little drawings. Nobody cares. My father's approach was more direct. Art is for people who can't do real work. It's a hobby, not a career. End of discussion. The Mercers' obsession with status infected everything. My academic achievements were measured not by my effort or growth, but by how they compared to the children of my parents' competitors. My friends were vetted based on their family names and net worth. Even my meals were controlled. "No daughter of mine will embarrass me by being overweight," my mother would say, removing food from my plate at dinner parties. But it was their financial dishonesty that cast the longest shadow. I noticed it first when I was 14, my father hosting late-night meetings with men who never came through the front door. Documents shredded immediately after signing, phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered a room. "Business is complicated," he'd say dismissively when I asked questions. "You wouldn't understand." What I did understand, even then, was the way my mother's shopping bags multiplied whenever my father closed a major deal. How contractors would suddenly disappear from projects, replaced without explanation, the whispered arguments about moving things offshore and keeping the auditors happy. My grandfather, Theodore Mercer, was different. He'd built the foundation of the family business through honest work and fair dealings. By the time I was born, he'd stepped back, giving my father control while maintaining a watchful eye from the sidelines. He saw through the facade my parents had constructed. "Your father measures worth in dollars and cents," he told me once while we sat in his study. "But true value isn't found in bank accounts, Olivia, remember that." He was the one who bought me my first professional art supplies, who attended my school art shows when my parents were too busy, who told me stories about great artists who changed the world with nothing but vision and determination. On my 16th birthday, while my parents threw an extravagant party for their friends, barely acknowledging me except to parade me around like a trophy, my grandfather pulled me aside and pressed a letter into my hands. "Not now," he whispered. "When you're ready, when you need it most." I never got to thank him. He died 3 months later, and something in my father changed. He became harder, more controlling. As if without my grandfather's watchful eye, he was finally free to become the man he truly was. I kept that letter hidden in my sketchbook, unread, somehow knowing that opening it meant accepting that my grandfather was truly gone. I had no idea then that those sealed pages contained the key to my future and to my parents' downfall. My 18th birthday fell on a crisp October evening, the kind where New England shows off its autumn glory, trees blazing with colour against a darkening sky. I remember standing in front of my mirror, smoothing down the emerald dress my mother had suggested I wear, wondering if tonight might finally be different. "The Westfield Academy of Fine Arts," I practiced saying aloud. "They've offered me a scholarship." My acceptance letter had arrived that morning, a dream realised after years of portfolio building and late-night studio sessions. I tucked it into my clutch, imagining my parents' surprised faces. Maybe, just maybe, they'd finally see that my art wasn't just a hobby. The Mercer family tradition dictated that milestone birthdays were celebrated at Maison Laurent, Boston's most exclusive restaurant. Not because the food was exceptional, but because being seen there meant something in my parents' world. The maitre d' greeted us by name, escorting us to the private dining room where 20 of my parents' closest friends and business associates waited. Not my friends. Theirs. Crystal clinked against crystal as champagne flowed. Conversation hummed around topics I had no interest in. Property values, stock portfolios, someone's new yacht. I sat between my mother and Mrs. Harrington, whose son had just been accepted to Harvard Business School, a fact she mentioned 7 times in 10 minutes. "And what about you, Olivia? Following in your father's footsteps, I presume?" she asked, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Before I could answer, my father stood, tapping his glass for attention. The room quieted. "18 years ago today," he began, "Victoria and I were blessed with a daughter." His practiced smile swept the room. "And tonight, we're proud to announce Olivia's future." My heart quickened. Had they somehow found out about my acceptance? Had they finally come around? "Starting next month, Olivia will be joining Mercer Developments as our newest junior associate." The room erupted in applause while I sat frozen, confusion washing over me. We had never discussed this, not once. "Dad," I said quietly when the applause died down, "I need to talk to you about something." "Not now, Olivia," my mother hissed, her smile never faltering. "But I've been accepted to Westfield Academy. For art? With a scholarship?" The words tumbled out, my hand pulling the letter from my clutch. The silence that followed was deafening. My father's face hardened, a muscle twitching in his jaw. "Put that away." "But," I said, "put it away." His voice remained even, controlled, but I knew that tone. It was the same one he used when firing employees. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of forced conversation and sidelong glances. My birthday cake, a towering creation I didn't choose, was presented, photographed, and barely eaten. I felt like I was drowning in plain sight, with everyone too polite to acknowledge it. It wasn't until we arrived home that the facade cracked. Art school? My father spat the words like poison as we entered the foyer. After everything we've built for you? I earned that scholarship myself, I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. This is my dream. Dreams don't pay mortgages, he sneered. Dreams don't build legacies. My mother circled me like a predator. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? We've already told everyone about your position at the company. I never agreed to that, I said, finding my voice. I never wanted that. What you want is irrelevant, my father said coldly. You're a mercer. You have responsibilities. To what? Your reputation? The slap came so quickly I didn't see it coming. My mother's hand left a stinging imprint on my cheek. You ungrateful little fool, she whispered. Everything we've done has been for you. No, I said, clarity suddenly washing over me. Everything you've done has been for yourselves. I'm just an accessory, another acquisition. My father's laugh was hollow. And what exactly do you think you'll accomplish with your little drawings? You think you'll survive in the real world? I'd rather try than spend my life pretending to be someone I'm not. That's when he delivered the ultimatum. You have a choice to make right now, Olivia. Either you accept your position at Mercer Developments and act like the daughter we raised, or you pursue this childish fantasy without our support, without our name, without our money. You're asking me to choose between my identity and your approval. I'm asking you to grow up, he snapped. Artists are a dime a dozen. Most end up waiting tables or worse. Maybe I'll be the exception. You won't be, my mother said with chilling certainty. You don't have what it takes. The words hung in the air between us, the final verdict on 18 years of trying to be enough for them. Then I guess this is goodbye, I whispered. Have you ever had someone you trusted completely betray you? That moment when you realize the people who should love you unconditionally have placed conditions on everything. What would you do if your own parents chose their reputation over your happiness? Would you break? Or would you, like me, finally see the situation with perfect clarity? 6 months after being disowned, I had settled into a new routine. Wake up at 5 a.m. in the tiny room my former art teacher, Ms. Daniels, had generously offered in her apartment, work the morning shift at Cafe Artemis, attend classes at the community college where I'd enrolled after deferring my Westfield acceptance. The scholarship wasn't enough to cover living expenses, then work evenings at the local gallery where I earned minimum wage dusting frames and answering phones. It wasn't the life I'd dreamed of, but it was mine. Every dollar earned, every small victory belonged to me alone. That Tuesday morning at the cafe started like any other. The hiss of espresso machines, the clatter of cups, the steady stream of professionals grabbing their caffeine fix before heading to their corner offices and board meetings. Medium Americano, extra shot, for Maxwell, I called out, placing the cup on the counter. The man who approached wasn't what I expected. Most lawyers from the financial district wore power suits and permanent scowls. This one, in his 60s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, wore a rumpled tweed jacket with leather patches at the elbows. Thank you, young lady, he said, his voice warm as he reached for his coffee. Then he froze, staring at me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. I'm sorry, he said, blinking. You just look remarkably like someone I used to know. Theodore Mercer. Any relation? My grandfather's name hit me like a physical blow. He was my grandfather, I said cautiously. His face brightened. Then you must be Olivia. My goodness, the resemblance is striking. I'm Maxwell Hargrove. I was your grandfather's attorney for over 30 years. The universe has strange ways of orchestrating fate. Of all the coffee shops in Boston, Theodore Mercer's lawyer walked into mine. Of all the baristas who could have made his coffee, I did. I've been trying to locate you for months, he continued, lowering his voice. Your parents claimed they had no contact information for you. That's because they don't want any contact, I said, the bitterness I thought I'd buried surfacing again. His expression darkened. I suspected as much. Do you have a break coming up? There's something important we need to discuss. 20 minutes later, we sat at a corner table, my manager eyeing us suspiciously until Maxwell ordered enough pastries to justify our occupation of prime real estate. Your grandfather was a remarkable man, Maxwell began, removing a leather portfolio from his briefcase, and far more perceptive than most gave him credit for. He slid a document across the table. The heading read, "The Theodore Mercer Arts Trust." 3 weeks before he died, your grandfather established this trust, Maxwell explained. He was concerned about the direction your father was taking the company and about how you were being treated. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages. I don't understand. Your grandfather liquidated his personal holdings, separate from the family business, and placed them in this trust. For you, specifically for your education and artistic pursuits. The sum at the bottom of the page made me gasp. This can't be right. $7 million plus the property on Marlborough Street, Maxwell confirmed. All held in trust until either your 21st birthday or, he paused, a small smile playing at his lips, until such time as you were no longer under your parents' roof and pursuing your artistic education independently. Whichever came first. But it means, Olivia, that you've met the conditions of the trust. The assets are available to you now. The cafe around me seemed to fade away as the implications sank in. Financial independence, art school without working 3 jobs, a future on my terms. There's more, Maxwell said, his expression turning serious as he pulled out another file. In the process of separating your grandfather's assets from the family business, I discovered irregularities. The second file contained spreadsheets, bank statements, and transaction records. Even with my limited financial knowledge, I could see the pattern. Your father has been systematically diverting company funds that partially belong to shareholders, into private accounts. He's been falsifying records, inflating project costs, and pocketing the difference. How long? At least 5 years, since shortly before your grandfather stepped down as CEO. And my mother? She's been complicit. The foreign accounts are primarily in her name. I thought about the shopping sprees, the vacations, the endless renovations to our already perfect home. All funded with stolen money. There's also evidence suggesting they've been skimming from your trust, Maxwell continued. Your grandfather suspected they might try, which is why he structured it the way he did. They couldn't access the principal, but they managed to divert some of the interest payments before I caught on. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. Not content with controlling my life, they had tried to steal my future as well. What happens now? I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. Maxwell leaned forward. That, Olivia, is entirely up to you. Imagine discovering that the people who threw you away had been stealing from you all along. The parents who called you worthless had been secretly terrified of your worth. The family that discarded you had been taking what was rightfully yours. What would you do with that power? Would you walk away content with your newfound security? Or would you ensure they faced consequences for every cruel word, every stolen dollar, every shattered dream? This story is about to take an unexpected turn that even I couldn't have predicted when I was standing in the rain with my belongings scattered across the pavement. If you're enjoying watching justice unfold so far, smash that like button right now. And if you know someone who appreciates seeing karma delivered with perfect timing, share this video with them. Your engagement helps our Nexus of Revenge community grow, and trust me, the way I orchestrated my parents' downfall, that's the part everyone will be talking about tomorrow. Revenge is a dish best served at precisely the right temperature, Maxwell told me over dinner at his home a week after our cafe encounter. Too hot, and you risk burning yourself in the process. Too cold, and you lose the satisfaction of seeing the impact. I'd moved out of Miss Daniels' apartment into a modest studio that weekend. Nothing extravagant, I didn't want to draw attention yet, but a place where I could breathe, plan, and prepare. Your grandfather knew this day might come, Maxwell explained, spreading documents across his dining table. He kept meticulous records of every conversation, every suspicious transaction. He was building a case. Why didn't he expose them himself? I asked. Maxwell's expression softened. He was dying, Olivia. The cancer diagnosis came just as he was gathering the final evidence. He had a choice. Spend his remaining months in legal battles or ensure you were protected. He chose me. The realization brought tears to my eyes. Besides, Maxwell continued, he believed Richard might still redeem himself. Your grandfather was an optimist to the end. Over the next 3 months, we built our case methodically. I withdrew from community college and enrolled at Westfield, using a portion of my trust to cover expenses. During the day, I immersed myself in art, finding healing in creation. Evenings were dedicated to understanding the complex web of financial deceit my parents had woven. They've been siphoning funds through shell companies in the Cayman Islands, Maxwell explained one night, pointing to a diagram he'd created. Then filtering it back through Victoria's consulting firm that doesn't actually consult on anything. I learned about offshore accounts and tax havens, about falsified invoices and manipulated contracts. The more I understood, the more I recognized patterns from my childhood, the hushed phone calls, the mysterious business trips, the sudden firing of accountants who asked too many questions. We have enough evidence to trigger a federal investigation, Maxwell said. But timing is crucial. What do you mean? Your parents' annual charity gala is in 6 weeks. The Mercer Foundation for Children's Arts. He smiled at the irony. Every major player in Boston's business and social circles will be there, including the district attorney and the head of the SEC's regional office, I added, remembering previous year's guest lists. Exactly. The perfect audience. We decided that night. The gala would be our stage. But a public revelation required perfect execution. I hired a private investigator to track my parents' movements, learning their new routines, the rhythms of their lives without me in them. I was surprised by how little had changed. They'd simply erased me and continued on, like removing a painting from a wall and forgetting it had ever hung there. The investigator reported that my mother had told acquaintances I was studying abroad. A convenient fiction to avoid admitting they'd thrown their only child away. Meanwhile, my father had promoted his assistant's son to the position that was supposed to be mine. They've replaced you, the investigator said bluntly, showing me photos of my parents at dinner with this new surrogate son. No, I replied, a calm certainty washing over me. They've replaced a role. They never knew me enough to replace me. 2 weeks before the gala, I received an unexpected call from Westfield's dean, my mixed media PC inheritance. A work exploring family legacy through fragmented portraits and shattered mirrors had won the prestigious Newcomer Award. It would be featured in the university's public gallery, opening the night after the gala. The universe has a sense of humour, Maxwell said when I told him. Or perfect timing, I replied. We added one final element to our plan. I commissioned a bespoke gown from an up-and-coming designer, emerald green like the dress I'd worn on my 18th birthday, but with one crucial difference. This one was designed on my terms, to my vision. Are you nervous? Maxwell asked the night before the gala, as we reviewed our strategy one last time. No, I realized, surprised by my own calm. For the first time in my life, I'm not trying to earn their approval or meet their expectations. I'm simply showing them who I've always been. The anticipation wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about revelation, about stepping into the light as my true self and letting the consequences fall where they may. Tomorrow, the Mercers would learn that their greatest creation wasn't their wealth or their social standing. It was me. 1 year after the gala that changed everything, I stand in what was once my father's office, now transformed into a light-filled studio space. Floor-to-ceiling windows that once showcased Boston's financial district as a kingdom to conquer now frame the city as an endless canvas of possibility. The Mercer Building, renamed the Theodore Mercer Arts Center, hums with creative energy. Where stern-faced executives once hurried through marble hallways, art students now wander with portfolios tucked under their arms. The boardroom where million-dollar deals were struck hosts life drawing classes and portfolio reviews. The executive suite my mother decorated with cold precision now houses a gallery featuring emerging artists who, like me, were once told their dreams weren't valuable enough to pursue.